We are back here at, actually we've never left. I think we're always here. We never leave unless we go to shows. Here at Fiberglass Farms in a secret location somewhere in Florida, which you can easily find by going to the internet and our website and find out where it is. So this, I'm standing in front of a car we've never done a video on before. I'm not even sure we actually put anything out on this car at all. This is the 1963 Warrior 1. Now, if you look up in magazines at the era, 63 and 64, you'll have a great deal of discussion. They had brochures on this car. A company called Vanguard Industries, as I remember, of Vanguard, which was a Ford vendor for air conditioning parts and such, where they saw the Mustang 1 concept car. Not the Mustang we all think of, 64 and a half, 65, and so forth, but the 1960, 61 or so Mustang 1 concept car, of which there's 2 or 3 out. I know there's one up in the, what is it, Greenwich, the Detroit Museum, Ford Museum. They have actually one there. They might have 2 there. I'm not sure where the other one's located. And molds were recently found that made the car and so forth. As I recall, the originals were aluminum, but molds were made for a fiberglass one. They have that one wrong. But it was a mid-engine, Ford-powered sports car, the Mustang 1 concept, and was powered by Ford's European division, a car called a Taunus, T-A-N-U-S, as I recall, Ford Taunus power. And that's what this is. So back in the early 60s, Fred Ricketts owned and ran the company. You can find brochures and such on Vanguard Industries, Vanguard Products. I can't remember. It was out of, I believe, Dallas. And I got to meet Fred and talk with him and document the car years later. And in fact, he was surprised we found it. But they were actually inspired by Vanguard, the Mustang 1, and the rear power, rear engine, Taunus Ford powered. And that's what this is. Custom chassis, tube chassis, rear engine, Taunus powered, Ford, the same I believe as Saab Sonnet, I think, had the same engine. And they made one. It was a prototype car, and it debuted in Cobo Hall, as I recall, January 1964. Built in 63, debuted in 64. Very attractive, mid-sized sports car. Windshield had an actual, as I remember, a fiberglass fairing, which we still have pieces of back here. Somewhat like the CRV Piranha Seagull in the back. And an enormous long hood. And this has a new engine that we rebuilt the engine a number of years ago, kind of waiting for us to get to this particular restoration. I don't know if you'll open it up or not. A nice clean engine is awaiting for its firing up as we go. You can see some of the suspension that will need to be reworked when we start the restoration of this car. We started it, then we stopped it, started it again. I was talking to Fred, why didn't they make this car? Because they went and made another car later, which I'll mention in a sec. And he said this was incredibly difficult to build. He hired a designer, a talented designer to design the car. We don't know who that is. Fred thought for years and years he'd be able to find the notes and so forth, but never did. So it was a mysterious industrial designer. Maybe we'll find it in some of the unfound articles yet. Maybe Joel Driscoll and his research skills will find it for us in newspapers, because it probably is documented in Dallas newspapers, the designer and all. They built it, they debuted it. It was a great success. They were going to go into production. He felt it was too difficult to build. And so he went to Europe, Fred Ricketts, that is, in Vanguard, and bought the leftover Apollo bodies from Intermechanica and brought those back and became they built and assembled cars that were called the Vetta Ventura, which is also referred to as the Texas Apollo, all aluminum, Intermechanica Apollo bodies, very collectible. So you're looking at actually their prototype, their very first car, missing for decades and decades. We found it about 15 years ago and brought it back. We found it with the help of Harold Pace. Harold was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and knew of this car in a junkyard. And it's like, well, why are we leaving it in a junkyard? And there wasn't much interest 20 years ago. So I went and put together a team and we brought it over to Harold's house, and then we shipped the car back here to Tampa, Florida. And that's where this car has remained, other than a little work and testing out new wheels and so forth. So not a bad thing. What's interesting is the Apollo Group, or the Texas Apollo Group, which is the Vetta Ventura, doesn't really know the history of their company started with this car. But like everything here at Fiberglass Farms, everything has a story. As I've said before, we'd rather be lucky than good. But with hard work, what is it they say also? The harder you work, the luckier you get. We never stop working, and we make more people work too. We bring them in, but the rewards of finding a story that you get to tell about America and those lost sports cars of the early post-war era, to me, is invaluable. It's priceless. I can't remember. There's a fan. Not much of a fan, but a fan that brings in air for the radiator.
Looks like a house fan in the kitchen.
It probably was a house fan. They didn't have any, and there's certainly no shroud there either. So obviously that have to be reworked to make it a little more a little more powerful way to cool the car. Small engine though.
Look at how deep the wheel tubs are. You don't actually hit anything when you're turning.
Oh,
I
nice.
didn't notice that before.
Very, very nice. Yeah, the back was tattooed. I think we had pulled all that stuff off the aluminum to get at the engine, pull it out, and so forth. So just one of one, missing for 50 years when we found it about 20 years ago, or maybe 40 years. And it's very restorable. Everything pretty much is here.
Also, that's a consistent theme across many of your cars. Pulled from junkyards, left to rot for decades prior to coming to you.
Yeah, I actually would love for people to find more of them than I can find. That's the challenge. Try to beat me at my own game. I think no one wants to play the game. And that's fine. I'll be happy to play it. Go find them, tell the story, share with all of you, and have some fun doing it. So.
Now, you had some renderings done of this one, right? Dan Palatnik did some?
Actually, we did. Dan did some beautiful ones. We're planning on making a kind of it's a Ferrari turquoise blue. I'm sure that's not the name of it. But you can see some of the color here where the windshield was. And back here, maybe a little bit easier. And it's very similar to that, a light color like that. Here, see here, definitely not red. Won't do red. The renderings done by Dan Palatnik of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I want to go down there and visit it at some point, but long way to go. So, and the renderings are beautiful, and they really help us and inspire, not just inspire us to do the car. We don't need the inspiration, but we need the help. And Dan will actually test out different colors, wheel treatments, wheel sizes. He's a scientist in terms of helping us understand how the car can realize its full potential before we actually begin the car. Those have already been done, and at the end of the video here, I'd like to share about 2 minutes of those.